Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Tyoxin, and this is the Witchy podcast, where we talk about all things witchy and many things not so witchy. Megan Volpert?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If I'm fucking with you, then I'll say Volpert, like Stephen Colbert.
That's awesome. All right, it's good. We're both sniffly.
This is a habit of a perfumer. Like everywhere I go,
really?
I'm just.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes I'm sniffly, but other times I'm just like getting in tune with my air.
My allergies have been like insane this past weekend. Like I took a COVID test last night because I was like, is this really allergies? And I was so negative. But yeah, so which on the one hand I was like, darn it, that means it really is allergies and this is just hell. So and not like
Welcome to Atlanta.
Right? Yeah, it's just yeah. Anyways, but when I was sick, they had me on so many like different meds that I didn't have allergies, and I was like, "This is great." But now I'm not on the meds. So
Yeah.
allergies again. So,
All I have to do is come real close to death,
I know,
and
right?
I can stop sniffling.
Yeah, such a trade-off.
Sometimes it feels that way.
Okay, let me start here. Let me do a thing. Let's do a clap sync just in case. Okay. Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Tyoxin, and this is the Witchy podcast, where we talk about all things witchy and many things not so witchy. With me today is Megan Volpert. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for hanging out with me.
Happy to.
Now, you just came out with a book. What is the title?
The title is Perfume.
What is the book about?
Perfume. Well, the series that this book is a part of is made by Bloomsbury Academic, and the series is called Object Lessons. And so each book in the series treats, it's just about 100, 110 pages, fits in your back pocket, and each of them treats a different object. Airplanes, refrigerators, hoodies, socks, eggs, trees, anything. That's you name it. There's a book about it in the Object Lesson series.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's meant to be a sort of interdisciplinary type of series that really addresses the object from as many facets as the author can manage to squeeze out of it. A lot of them have kind of personal storytelling combined with those nonfiction research elements, and my book is no exception there. That's the style I prefer to write in for all my work anyway, really. So the Perfume book has 8 chapters, and they're sort of in pairs. So the first 2 are science and literature. And then we have technology and performance, space and time, self and other. So between those 8 things, it's really like philosophies of everything that you encounter in your day, like how your self-identity is created through smell, the science of how that process works, the cynical marketing values that are involved in that process, the artistry and creativity that are involved in that process, and pretty deep on the psychology and philosophy of fragrance.
Did they come at you and say, we need you to write a book, and you're like, okay, I'm going to write it on this topic? Or
no, I have been in love with Object Lessons since the series first launched.
Okay.
It's also a series of essays in the Atlantic Monthly magazine. So I started reading these essays in the Atlantic, and then I discovered that they were going to be doing a book series. And so I've been, for a long time, I reviewed their books for Pop Matters, which is an online magazine that I write for. And I just loved every single thing that they were doing. And finally, I was like, must get in.
Oh, awesome.
And so, I brainstormed a handful of topics that I thought were objects that were important enough to me that I could really get jazzed about doing it. And then in the end, all those other objects dropped away in favor of Perfume. It just seemed like such an obvious, like I was ready to go there finally in my own life. And so fortunately, after a long and grueling competitive pitching process, they were like,
Really?
come on.
Had you ever written about Perfume before now?
Yes, a lot of my books have a page or two, a chapter or two, but I've never explicitly set out to do a whole book project about it. So this was very exciting to me to get to research this.
Okay, 1 second. I'm feeling really paranoid. I need to check record on this thing.
Sure.
Make sure I hit record. Yes, I did. Okay, good.
Winning.
Well, only takes a couple times to not hit record, and you're like,
This is too good to be wasted. She'll never say these exact words again in this exact order.
That does, but I want, it's easy enough to interrupt it to be like, okay, let me just go check it. Otherwise, I'm thinking about the whole time.
Sure.
So then it tells in the book sort of how you came about as far as Perfume, and you have also done your bit of making your own different parts and everything. Is that a hobby? Is that like a growing hobby? Is it a hobby that's
Yeah.
out there?
Hobby is so loaded, right?
Right.
Like, is it just you in your living room, or is it you
No, is there a
giving?
community around it, really?
Yeah, no, in the sense,
No,
no, because I mean,
because it's not cheap.
I'm a lone wolfy person, and
Okay.
so I don't collaborate with ease.
Okay.
I like to have my own stranglehold on the creativity of the process,
Hmm.
I guess. Um, but I do hope to put it out there in the world in some fashion sooner or later. I'm not at a place to scale it up yet. My chemistry knowledge is not very strong because my math is not very strong. So even though the psychological and theoretical elements of perfumery I have very well mastered,
Hmm.
translating the ideas that are in my head into something that goes into a bottle and then is skin safe for people to put on their bodies without drilling
Okay.
holes in their epidermis or in their clothing. Um, or staining their clothing. That's something that I still need to work toward.
I guess that is a concern
Yeah.
because it's chemicals and
Yeah.
it could just burn people
Yeah.
or worse,
Uh-huh.
right? So there isn't really like some sort of makeshift DIY perfuming community hobbyist type
No,
group.
there's, wealthy ladies that go to brunch and
Uh-huh.
fill up on champagne and then have somebody tell them how to make perfumes for 2 hours and they get to go home with a bottle. There's stores that are like
Oh,
that,
okay.
where you can do just like a very brief,
Hmm.
not very educational workshop about fragrance. But there's no like you have quilting bees and
Right.
crochet communities. There's no like let's get together and make perfume type stuff as far as I can see. Most of us are very individualized creators.
And you don't communicate. I don't know
No,
why I'm going on this. That's very interesting. So then, do you still dabble in doing that?
for sure. Definitely. Like I had family in town 2 or 3 weeks ago, and my sister-in-law brought me a sample vial that she had gotten that she liked, but it was for something that she couldn't really afford. And so she was like, "Can you tell me what I like about this? And then can you maybe make me something that is similar enough?" And so we sat down and kind of chatted about it. We did like the discovery consultative type of process
Yeah.
about it. I figured out what she liked about the fragrance, and then she sat with me while I pulled out all my vials and jars and kind of, I showed her some things to sniff that were in the same orbit as what she liked. And so she really created it herself, but I, fixed the proportions and things like that.
You had all this stuff?
Uh huh.
What is your perfume making
What's the setup?
collection look like?
Yeah, it looks like a science lab the way that you would think.
Yeah.
It's many big boot shoe boxes filled with, I have the essential oil box, the perfume box, the raw ingredients like perfumer's alcohol box,
Hmm.
the box that's filled with nothing but 500 plastic 1 milliliter droppers, the
Now,
box that's filled with test tubes and
perfumes are
vials.
oil and what other types of?
Perfumes are essentials, some sort of plant matter,
Okay.
that is not necessarily oil. It could be the flowers themselves,
Okay.
um, alcohol, and a smidge of water.
Okay. Huh.
It's like tea, but not drinkable.
Oh,
Tea is perfume for your insides,
right.
and then what you spray on your body is perfume for your
Now,
outsides.
how much research and in what areas did you have to research to write your book? Because you already have a bit of knowledge as far as making perfume and some of the history.
Yeah. I actually needed a lot more deep dive into the history, especially of particular perfume houses.
Mm.
Perfume has been around in parts of France and parts of Germany and Switzerland since the 1500s, 1600s, and so learning about some of the oldest houses, which were not even houses, but just like monks
Hmm.
in the mountains
Okay.
doing their due with whatever flowers were around, you know. But some of those perfumes remain iconic today. And how does a perfume last for 400 years? I had to kind of figure out.
How
Um,
does it last? Well, you mean like the recipe and the time, like not the actual
both,
bottle. Really?
both. A thing about perfume is that to experience it, you must murder it, right? Like you can only smell it once it's in the air and up your nose. And so you must use it. It's not like a painting.
Mm,
A
okay.
thousand people can go and look at a painting and
Right.
the painting never depletes.
Hmm.
But to sniff a perfume means to let it loose and let it go away,
Used and
right?
consumed, and yeah.
Yeah. And so even if you have a bottle of perfume that is airtight, totally sealed,
Hmm.
there's no such thing as perfect airtightness. So a bottle of perfume can last 400 years under the right circumstances, but ultimately, if anybody would ever like to smell it again,
Mm-hmm.
then it will deplete to the point of extinction.
Right.
Perfumes can go extinct.
Let me ask you, how, what does the research into these houses look like? Is it just like other books that somehow have?
Oh, sure. I
Oh,
read a
okay.
half a dozen books about Coco Chanel,
Oh, okay.
some books about the founding of the House of Guerlain, just myriad information about Dior as a creator of fashion versus a creator of fragrance. It's a lot of fashion industry kind of legwork, but then also raw ingredient legwork, like source materials. You know, vetiver only comes from so many places. It comes from Haiti or it comes from Java, but that's it. You know,
Right. Have
so
there been attempts to grow it anywhere else? I read that in the book, but like those two places, anywhere else? I mean,
I'm sure there have been. The thing
okay.
about the perfume industry is they don't want people to know
Right.
what they're trying out,
Mm.
you know, but it's not an accident that Simrise, which is one of the like foremost perfume conglomerates in the world, one of the big five, so to
Mhm.
speak. It's not an accident that they have a giant laboratory on the edge of the Amazon. Because whatever biodiversity is in there,
Mhm.
whatever materials have not yet been discovered, they want to be first, and they want them when they want to use the materials right then and there.
What else is something that was that you found surprising in your research? You're like, oh my God, I didn't know this, or was it all expected?
I guess no, it was not all expected, but oftentimes it was like, aha, of course.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
not a surprise factor, but like oh, something inside of me knew that all along, but I never articulated it before. I guess the way that individual bodies call out to certain fragrances, the way that individual bodies crave the fragrances they need.
Hmm.
You know, we say this about food for people who need specialized diets and stuff. Like, your body tells you what kind of food you should put into it,
Mm.
things that taste good or feel good or things that you crave. Now, some of that stuff is like sugar. That's not good. We crave
Right.
it because we're addicted, not because it's medicine to our bodies. But in the case of fragrance, you know, like my mother-in-law has a lot of skin problems and she is constantly compelled by fragrances that have to do with roses. Roses
Hmm.
do have all kinds of dermatological positive effects. You know, I suffer from an autoimmune condition, and the fragrances that call out to me are ones that are heavily based in tree resins, which have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. And so my nose doesn't necessarily understand that Apopanax or myrrh
Hmm.
or whatever, cedar tree oil. It doesn't understand that those things are going to help it, I guess, but something in the relationship there is so clear and consistent across all individual bodies everywhere.
So you're saying one of we have like four or five main senses is actually telling us some sort of information in what we need.
Yeah,
And that, and it is interesting how much we discount smell as one of those informational
especially in
senses.
the West.
I mean, only recently, COVID and people losing their sense and but yeah, it's
It's a very underrated sense, you know? It comes through our nose, and we still think of taste as even having more of a primacy in our lives
mhm,
than scent, but smell is 70% of what we think of as taste. You know what I mean? Like, if you hold your nose and eat something, it tastes like almost nothing because our taste buds don't really do hardly any work at all. The function of the tongue is to push the waft, to
mhm.
push the waft up the back of one's nose rather than directly through the front of one's nostrils. You know, so if you close off the avenue by pinching your nose and all that's left is your taste buds, there's almost nothing to taste. It's maddening to think about, right? In the sense that, like, fragrance is everywhere all day long, and our inability to notice it, to embrace how it can improve our lives, is really the main argument of the book. You know, that we must live a more fragrant life.
How well, first, before I lose this thought, are there any newer, smaller fragrances or fragrance makers uh, out there that you know of that are good? Is that a
Good.
thing even? Like, are there really smaller ones, or are they just kind of making stuff that's already out there and they're just like, I discovered this, but really it's been out there?
Um, well,
Is that even an industry?
Yeah, definitely. Niche perfumery or
Hmm.
indie perfumery.
Hmm.
The same way we have kind of in music, the idea of the main corporate bands
Hmm.
versus the smaller indie bands, and then maybe the alternative bands that are midway straddling between those two worlds. Perfume has the same type of deal. You know, you have the major corporations and houses, which have been around for hundreds of years, or in the case of the Americans, 200, 250 years.
Hmm.
Um, and then you have smaller, what's called niche fragrances, which maybe use more expensive ingredients. They do smaller runs. They generally don't advertise. They're generally the most expensive types of fragrance because they're much smaller houses operating pretty independently. And then you have, you know, indie fragrancers, which I guess, you know, if I would sell my products on my website or something, then I might be considered an indie fragrancer, you know, somebody who's just flying solo whenever possible, who doesn't really have any infrastructural support. So in the niche fragrance market or in the indie fragrance market, there are a couple of really good small brands. Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab out in California does brilliant work. Sucre Bell up in Oregon does really amazing work. And these are like small batch, you know, they have a huge catalog of offerings, but when the fragrance is gone, it's gone,
Oh,
you
okay.
know. So they might have 100
Why is that?
bottles because ingredients are rare, ingredients are expensive, and also they're genuine artists, you
Okay.
know. So the idea is like this season, what we're making is,
Hmm.
next season, what we're making is, because perfume relies on naturals, on fruits and flowers and trees
Hmm.
and things, it is heavily tied to the rotation of the seasons. Um, you know, the same way you want a pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks once the leaves start coming off the trees in
Hmm.
October, you also want fragrances that are the equivalent of pumpkin spice latte when Halloween rolls around, right? And so yeah, products come and go.
Do you wear perfume in your regular daily life?
Oh, yes. Every day
Every
for
day.
starters. I also use it for other things like every day before I get in the shower. I'm gonna just drop some very like toilet water loose perfume um in the bathtub before I step into it, just to get that initial fragrance blast when I come in. I change my perfume. I work from home, and so it's a very small atmosphere
Hmm.
and like sort of more intimate. Like I'm not at risk of offending anybody in the office by
Right.
wearing a big fragrance, but I generally change my scent like I would say a minimum of twice a day and a maximum of
Really?
like 6 times a day. Yeah, because
A max, and this is why you're at home, or the 6 times a day? Is that depending, like different functions, different,
if I'm at
or
home, if I'm working from
really?
home all day, I will change my fragrance as many as 6 times. But it's like DJing, you know, you don't just
Hmm.
go from like Prince to Stevie Wonder right away. You have to work your way from
Now,
one type of beat to the next type of beat. And so I might do like a series of green fragrances, and I'll
mhm.
start with my loudest one that's going to give me a whole lot of energy to get started on my morning.
And
Uh,
you're not putting these on you like
yeah,
we. Oh, okay. And then how do you do? Does it just wear off that quickly, and then you're like, okay, I need to, or are you changing clothes? Like I just, how does the whole like
depends.
adding?
Depends. Some fragrances stay on the body or stay on clothes a
Hmm.
very long time. Bodies are warmer than clothes all the time, so
Hmm.
bodies will always burn a fragrance off faster than an item of clothing will. But yeah, I mean, it depends. In the summer, you can change perfumes every hour if you want because your body's just running through it,
Interesting.
right? But if I'm doing like a series of green perfumes all day, I don't necessarily need to change clothes because what I'm doing is gradually evolving and layering something that is getting more and more complicated and
Are
interesting.
there like so like for you, you do that like over the course of a day. Are there any just like my head goes, are there any like box set programs that would lead you through a perfume smell sensory tour throughout the day or week that people sell? Or is that a thing?
Discovery sets are definitely a thing.
Hmm.
So, like, you know, any fragrancer might say, here's our 10 best selling fragrances in mini sample vials that you can get for some like semi ridiculous, but not totally ridiculous price.
Right.
But that doesn't come with any instruction booklet for like
Uh-huh.
what to apply and when and stuff
There's no
like that.
meal plan for it.
Right. That's consultancy that I'm equipped to provide, but it's kind of rare to get it.
Right. Yeah, well, and like I saw you mentioned in there like the small vial, like even testers, it ends up being kind of expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. to even get a set of testers, but of course that's cheaper than getting a set of bottles.
Yeah. Like, why would I blind buy an entire
Right.
bottle of something for $150 that I
Mhm.
have never smelled it and I don't know what it smells like on my skin and my clothes when I could spend $7 for like 6 drops of it? And that is exorbitant. A
Yeah.
dollar a drop is
Right.
very exorbitant,
Right.
but much less so for something that I really want to try.
Now, so I don't wear cologne or perfume or anything, but what is the best way to go start buying some?
Listen to your nose. And if you feel your nose is too dumb to tell you anything, then search with your eyes.
So I go to a store.
Look for bottles that are a color that you like. For example, my wife and I kid about how she is into the blue bottles, which generally those are marketed for like water scents or citrus heavy scents.
Okay.
So, she didn't start knowing anything about perfume, but her eyes were constantly drawn to the blue glass
Interesting.
when we would go to the counter. And then she would sniff those and they're all full of orange and that's one of her favorite. She really likes to be peppy and optimistic and uplifted. So orange fragrances are where it's at for her, or orange blossom fragrances are where it's at. So, she just used her eyes to find the bottles that she liked. And fortunately, that marketing campaign is a real correspondence with what is in the bottle, I like green fragrances. So either I look for bottles that are green or I look for fragrances that are, literally tinted with a green color.
What's a green fragrance?
Greens are things that smell green. They are herbaceous
Okay.
or involve trees sometimes or mosses. Things that smell very earthy, but also sort of like monstrous and swampy. Yeah. Vetiver, cypress.
Okay. I don't think I've knowingly smelled vetiver, so
You have smelled vetiver
sure.
7 million times
sure,
and never
but
known that's what
right,
it was.
exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that word until I read your book, and I was like, I don't know that word.
All
So,
right, that's a win. I'll
yeah.
take it.
No, absolutely. And then it was, yeah. What about like amber or brown bottles then? I'm curious.
Ambers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those would be.
Darn
I
it.
mean, amber is a made up thing. We think of amber as like the teardrops that are frozen out of trees.
Mhm.
That they come from resin, but we imagine them. Like I'm thinking of the mosquito from Jurassic Park,
That's what I
preserved in
thought too.
amber,
Yes.
right? Or like ladies who wear pendants
Okay.
made of that stuff.
Yeah.
So amber doesn't have a smell. It's kind of like a made up perfume concept, but what it is a combination of vanilla and labdanum and a few other sort of like medicinal type smells
Mhm.
that give it what we think of as the concept of amber. So that's the other thing. The perfume industry is very sneaky. Some ingredients are existent and some are just like sort of made up according to what they think people want.
All right. So if I were to start getting into it, and because I'd never, so is there a preference for you, like in department store perfume counters, or more just one shop, like Sephora or something? I don't know. Whoever, I don't even know who sells perfumes
Yeah.
anymore.
Where do I go to get
Right.
perfume? Yeah. Okay. So the internet is an incredible place to get perfume, but the downside is you can't smell anything
Right.
through the internet.
Apparently
So that is
not yet.
tricky, right? You have to have some sense of what you like if you're going to shop for perfume on the internet.
Mhm.
Go to the perfume counter and sniff around and see what's there. Most people who work at fragrance counters at like major department stores, Saks,
Mhm.
Nordstrom, whatever, they may have some formal training in a particular brand. Like the lady behind the Tom Ford counter can
Mhm.
tell you about Tom Ford, but probably can't tell you about Diana Vreeland.
Right.
So the person behind the counter may be somewhat knowledgeable about a specific brand, but you'll never find a perfume lady at one of those department stores that's like, let me give you the grand tour of everything on this floor. So you do kind of just have to literally sniff it out for yourself.
Okay.
Or you can hire a consultant like me, and we can sit down for an hour and I can say, give me some like deep psychological insight into who you are and what you care about and what your body tells you. And then I can tell you, here's the range of things that you should be looking for and maybe even suggest a couple of fragrances that would work.
Now, side note, is that a thing you professionally do?
Um,
Offer?
yes.
Okay.
Am I employed by an organization for that purpose? No, that would
Right.
this falls deeply in the like fledgling side hustle category.
Hmm.
You know, as I was working on this book and talking to people about it, they were like, I just would like to sit down with you for an hour and have you tell me what to do about
Right.
perfume.
Right.
And so I thought, oh, yes, that would be fun. Wait, this is monetizable.
Now, anywhere in the U.S., is there such like a perfume shop that uh, does custom stuff like that, where you can walk in and
4 of us.
I
Hmm.
mean that's
Yes, I would
so
say
what?
the
Yeah.
number one
It's
place
going
to
to be so
go
powerful.
for actual knowledgeable
Well,
experts with an
mhm.
incredible
We're talking
variety of
together.
Yeah,
samples
thank
would
you.
be
Excellent. Such
Lucky
good
Scent.
conversation. Thank you.
Lucky
Yeah.
Scent
I hope
has
I'll
a
catch
main
up with you again
location in
sometime.
LA, and I believe they
Awesome.
have
That
one
sounds
more
great.
that's
Thanks,
somewhere
Mark.
on the East Coast.
Hmm.
I'm going to assume in New York, but I'm not super sure. Don't quote me on that. Also, this was pre-pandemic times, the last time I looked at
Right.
where their locations were. But their LA store is incredible. It's mostly filled with niche perfumes, so it is on the expensive side. But you can go, and the people that work there are extremely knowledgeable about even the most current releases from all the major niche houses. I have had many an educational tour through what they have going on there, and it's an amazing place that will leave you totally nose blind. You will sniff so many things that you will have a
Hmm.
headache afterward, but it is worth it.
Can you or how good can you it training your nose basically? People can do that
Yes,
and to a pretty well degree.
yes,
Even
everyone can.
okay. Because I mean, different sense. It's not like all,
Sure.
yeah,
But it's like training your dog. Even if your dog is a moron, you can teach your dog how to sit, right? It might take weeks and weeks, and it might take a lot of treats, but you
uh-huh.
can teach any dog how to sit and maybe how to roll over, right?
So without too blanketing, but most people could learn to really
Yes,
enhance their sense of smell and identify
yes.
and get deep into this.
Yes,
I,
especially to pick out one or two things if you find a signature fragrance
mhm.
that you love, that you wear every day, next time you're on the train, if somebody else is wearing that fragrance, you'll be like, where's she at? I know it. I smell myself in here. This lady is wearing Diorissimo and so am I. Where is she? Definitely. So sometimes you get a really narrow and specific vocabulary out of
Mhm.
it. Like my wife can smell orange blossoms anywhere now because she's had enough perfume experience with a couple of things that she loves that have orange blossom that she can really pick it out. Um, it's a snobby hobby like wine people are. This bottle tastes like stone fruit and wet earth and like all that stuff, all the sommelier stuff.
Mhm.
Same thing with perfume.
Interesting. All right, and then did you always have a very good sense of smell? You would say, or
I don't know.
okay.
I'm not sure how to answer,
Do you
like I
think
didn't
that
really test myself on it until recently, I guess.
okay? And how did you test yourself recently?
Well, just in the process of the research for this book,
Mhm.
so many of my suspicions about things were confirmed so repeatedly that I was like, oh, I'm getting good at conjecture and forecasting about this. Like if I learn so and so has a new fragrance that involves jasmine and vanilla
Mhm.
and it's being sold as a feminine product, not as a unisex product, I'm like, okay, it probably smells like one of these three other things that I've smelled. And then I'll get a sample and be like, yep, this is a reference to XYZ from the 90s or from the 70s.
Are there still a lot of new, like genuinely new fragrances being created?
There are new products being created. There are
Right.
not that many. I
That's not,
mean,
yeah, because
it's like,
marketing's a big thing. So, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Are there new smells being created? Some, but not a lot. And
mhm,
even those would have strong reference points to past houses or, maybe a base note in common that they've been using for 10 years or something.
mhm.
Um, but there are hundreds and hundreds of new perfumes that enter the marketplace every year. I read a statistic that's like 8 perfumes a day. The world launches
Really?
8 new perfumes a day. I don't know how accurate that is, but it
Mhm.
does give you a sense of this is a very voluminous industry. Most of them sink and fail and you will never hear of them,
Right.
but there's an infinite amount of technically new products available all the time.
All right. Um, you have a talk this weekend.
I do. Let's get to some witch stuff, huh?
Yeah. So, you have a what are we, a book conversation
Yeah, a
on
Q&A, a public
okay.
Q&A.
That's so professional. Okay, you have a public Q&A about your book this weekend, Saturday at Acapella Books
hmm
with Leah, and it's from what time's the start?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Okay, three. Okay, yeah. Be there. I don't know.
It should be fun. I have literally no clue what she's going to ask me, but the reason why I asked her to come and ask me
Uh-huh.
things was, um, she seems to have a really keen sense of medicine for the body, natural medicine for the
hmm
body, and also a sense of just how to use everyday things to make magic happen. A really keen sense of what intentionality is for, and perfumes are similarly a highly intentional way of living your daily life, a lens through which to view your intentions every day. And so I thought probably we could generate some good talks about how to manifest what you want in life just by picking a perfume, you know?
You know, it really, as far as atmosphere and mood enhancement and all of the different things, it's still, yeah, very underrated. If even remembered, most people don't consider it. So, um, like in my head, I think there's just so much space for the growth of perfumes and scents uh, in our lives. So,
It's a major communication tool. And even if the other person is receiving the signals of your perfume in an unconscious manner rather than
mhm.
a conscious manner, it will have an effect on their attitude and sometimes even their behavior. You know, there's a big difference if I go into a meeting with my boss wearing calming, cooling, lavender,
Mhm.
kind of freshy, relaxed scents versus if I go in wearing something that's full of like black pepper and incense and myrrh. One of those is like Cleopatra, powerful
Uh-huh.
alpha fragrance, and the other one of those is like we're just chilling in this bath of ideas that we're creating together. Everybody relax, you know.
I want the Cleopatra one now.
Yes.
What is
Yes.
what? Okay, we're gonna finish up. But what is a perfume or fragrance in that mode that I could go find?
In the Cleopatra
Yes,
mode.
yeah,
Oh,
that you
there's no
described.
shortage. But let's talk about ingredients. So, Cleo, as her friends call her, was known to was known to perfume the sails of her ships. So imagine, you're standing on the shore of, Rome or
hmm
whatever, awaiting what you've been told is the most beautiful lady who also happens to be in charge of the next biggest slice of empire that you have your eyeball on. How can we make a partnership between
hmm
our two empires? You are standing on the shore looking out at the sea and you smell all the sea air, but then suddenly her ships come over the horizon and they maybe are impressive looking and maybe not, but the smell of them is strong enough to overcome the water of the sea and
That's
the air
amazing.
of the sea. And the smell of them is just pure opium. You know what I mean? It's cinnamon
hmm
and myrrh and all these like really intensely rich vanilla smells. Imagine having a scent so powerful that it is bigger than the ocean. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The intimidating force of that. If you're, fucking Mark Anthony standing around on the sidelines waiting, like, let me see what she looks like.
Uh-huh.
Oh, what she smells like, though, I can smell for miles
Mm.
before I even get a glimpse of her face, before I even can appraise her as a leader or as a potential romantic partner. I can smell her. That's intimidating as all get out.
Yeah, I want that. So,
Cinnamon. Hit the cinnamon, hit the myrrh. You're looking for like a very wintry and warm fragrance then,
okay.
as well as something that's quite spicy.
Any brands off the top of your head?
I mean, every brand has a
Oh,
winter
they do?
offering.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
Okay. See, I don't even know
Yeah.
that. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out. We can
It's
get
been
this
a
up as soon
pleasure.
as possible. Thank you. The end.
Oh, that was fun.
Oh, good. Yeah. Look, can I see your book with me?
Yeah.
So
Nice and pocket
nice.
sized.
Yeah, no, it's nice.
This is the first time I've ever published a book that has flaps on the inside and outside cover. I don't know why that felt like a cool milestone, but it
Yeah.
really did. I was like, oh, this is a real book. It has flaps. This is an expensive cover.
I mean, yeah. You have an agent and all that stuff, right?
Mm-mm.
Oh, really? I
I'm a
didn't know.
punk. I'm steadfastly unagented by choice.
Oh, okay.
They call me and
Yeah.
I do not return their calls.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Just like you don't want to give them money or?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a racket
Yeah.
and I don't want a book manuscript to sit around for 6 months before it gets sold anywhere. The other thing is, I don't even write on spec for the most part anymore. Like, I'll pitch a project and get it under contract, and then I'll begin writing it.
Mhm.
If you want an agent, that's like you've written this thing and you have no way to find it a home. So you give it to them and a 10% cut to figure out where it belongs.
Right.
So could I make more money? Maybe, but then I have to write the books not knowing where they go. And I like to write the books knowing where they will
Mhm.
go. Yeah.
What, real quick, what other, I guess I could look online, but what other topics were your books on?
I have several rock and roll books.
Yeah.
My book on Bruce Springsteen won Georgia Author of the Year last year. Thank you. And I have a book on Tom Petty that comes out in November. That's about a particular album
nice.
whose anniversary is in November.
Yeah.
And a book on RuPaul, a book on Andy Warhol. I do a lot of like queer and drag related philosophy stuff
Okay.
too. And a couple of anthologies. When I was younger, I wrote a lot more poetry than I do now, but I'm hoping to get back to some of that soon. My next book is going to be about Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Leo will love that.
Yeah, every white woman in North America will love that. My wife, after we signed the contract, my wife looked at me and was like, Megan, you stand an honest to God chance of being on the bestseller list for once in your whole life, but it's going to be the Canadian bestseller list. And I was like, you know what? That might be true. And that's really exciting. Yeah.
You've written it or you're writing it?
I have the outline. The research
okay.
phase has just begun. It's not
Okay.
due for another 18 months, so I have a little leeway.
I am very excited about that book.
Me too.
Yeah, I do enjoy musician type biographies or not. I mean,
Yeah.
covering them and everything else. So
Yeah, my kind of American Studies rock and roll scholarship is probably what I'm most known for. But any gender studies topic is in my wheelhouse. Any pop culture and gender studies topic.
All right. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing the